All right, everyone. It's about 9 o'clock. We're gonna go ahead and get started. My name is Damon Williams. I am one of the systems technicians for Amcon Controls and Building Controls and Solutions. I have about 20 plus years in this in the control industry, working with various controls, different types of control systems, but primarily Honeywell. Today we're going to be going over the setting up the CIPer50 and the licensing part of the CIPer50s as well. So let's go ahead and get started. So the CIPer50s, first thing you need to know is they're pretty much just like a JACE 8000. The only difference is it has more memory than a JACE 8000 does. And it has embedded IOs on the controller itself. It is 26 onboard IOs, and there can be expanded up to 2,500 IOs using expansion modules. There's two Ethernet ports on the controllers. Unlike the JACE 8000, where only one port is active out of the box, on the CIPer50s, both IP Ethernet jacks are actually active. So you can use either one. Those IP addresses is 192.168.200.20. That will be for port one. And then for port two, your IP address is 192.168.201.20. So you can use either one of those ports when you first go to set up a CIPer30. I mean, CIPer50, I'm sorry. You do have to go through the same commissioning process that you would do with a JACE 8000. And out of the box, the default username and password for your platform will be the traditional Tritium and Niagara for the password. There is two RS-485 ports on the controller as well, that you would set up for BACnet or Modbus. This controller is, you can also do LAN with this controller, but there's a third-party module that you would have to buy. And on the top of the controller here, right next to the two Ethernet ports, there's a USB port that you would plug into. You would plug that LAN module into that USB port. Also on the front of the controller here, you have another USB port. That one is, when you plug that into your laptop, that actually creates a dedicated Ethernet, virtual Ethernet jack. And that's your third way of being able to get into that device to connect to the platform through serial shell. That IP address cannot be changed. It is an embedded IP address that is for communication between your laptop and the CIPer50 itself. The CIPer50 comes in two different variants, one with a display and one without the display. If you do the one without the display in the picture below, there is a port there that is looks like an Ethernet jack, but is strictly used for Honeywell's HMI display, which is this one that has the little central line deal on it here at the bottom. That's basically used to mount to the front of a panel, or or you can actually use it as a handheld commissioning device, or a device that you can walk up to the controller, plug in, and make overrides and stuff to the controller itself. The cool thing about the CIPer50 as well is all the terminal blocks that is on this controller are removable, and they use push pins instead of the screw terminals. So you can actually just slide the wires in and then push the little pin in for a quick release. Niagara 4, the tools for it, there is no special tools. You can actually use kit control to program the controller. And there are some other tools that Honeywell have that is actually from Centraline, which is the European version of this controller. You can use those tools and you can mix and match those tools as well. Licensing for the SMA is basically the same as the JACE 8000s. You get a 18-month SMA right out of the box, and and you can actually up that to 1 year, 3 year, or 5 years. Another deal is right out of the box when you get your the regular license, they give you 5 devices with it. The only catch is with those 5 devices, you only get 100 parts. You can only expand this device up to 50 devices, and up to 50 devices, you can do up to 2,500 parts. Here is what the expansion modules would look like. If anybody have seen any of Honeywell's proprietary controls, the XL5000 or XL800 controllers. These are the same modules, and the way you connect these modules would be to the RS-485 ports, and basically you would drop a deal into the JACE, which is called, to the CIPer50, which is called panel bus. That's the communication that they communicate over. These devices does not count against your device count, but they will count against your part count that you have in the system. So whenever you are licensing this, you need to license this accordingly. So that's a quick overview of the CIPer30s. So we can get into that. Little tidbit is that Honeywell recently, yesterday, just released their version of Web's 4.9. So, but as of this time right now, the CIPer30s and the CIPer50s are not compatible with 4.9. So the versions that you would have to stay with is either 4.4, 4.7, or 4.8. There were some issues with 4.9, so they are actually working on that right now to get that solved. And then also, Tritium released a bulletin yesterday as well that actually talks about the end of life for Niagara 4.4. So if there are any CIPer50s out there that are still licensed for 4.4, you may want to start looking at moving those over to 4.7 or 4.8 at this time. The license for it will actually still go up to 4.9, but like I said, as of right now, the CIPer30s and the CIPer50s are not compatible with 4.9. All right, so this is a simple program, and I'm going to walk you through here in a minute on how to, the steps that you're going to need to go through to create one. But all of this right here was actually using kit control to do the programming. There is no downloading of your programming with this. As you program, it is all live programming. So again, there is no downloading of any programming or anything like that. And unlike the Classic spiders, there is no going into engineering mode, and there is no way of testing your program out if you're doing it online, if you're doing it offline. So there's no simulation with this as well. You can actually put some function blocks there to do overrides for like temperatures and then like simulate it yourself. But as far as an actual simulation mode, there isn't one for the CIPer 50s. So I have a CIPer 50 here that I use for demos. Um, go ahead and delete this. So one of the things, like I say, starting up the CIPer 50 is basically no difference than starting up a JACE 8000 or a CIPer 30 if you're dropping your own station into it or you're upgrading it from 4.7 to 4.8 or anything like that. So there is a commissioning wizard that you still go through, and basically all the functions is just your typical functions of a JACE. Driver wise is pretty much the same. You can double click on drivers, hit new, and then go through the list here for different drivers that is actually on your system at that time. So to program a CIPer 50 with its IOs, basically they use what is called onboard IO network. You want to go ahead and add that. And then up underneath the onboard IOs is going to come up with device 26 IOs. That's the only version that they have. Or you can go through your palette here. And if you go through here, is going to be CL for central line, and then onboard IOs to open up your palette here. And then you would just take your onboard network and then drop it onto here. Only one onboard network can be used, and that's just for the 26 IOs that you have on your system at that time. Under your onboard IO network, if you just double click on that, or I'm sorry, go to, you expand the device 26 IOs and then go to parts right here, and then just push discover. So it discovers all of your physical inputs and outputs on there. It actually gives you the addresses of each one. And then it also tells you what that terminal block information is for each one of your inputs. So you basically just, like any typical deal, you can just take it and drag it, drop it here. And then under this screen here is where you go to do your configurations. So there is 0 to 10 or 2 to 10. It does not do 4 to 20. If you have any devices that is 4 to 20, you will still have to use a 500 ohm resistor to drop it to 2 to 10. You can select whether if it's direct acting or reverse acting, and then the position remains is basically for if you have the expansion modules there, you can actually select what position you want that output to stay at. If you lose the communication between your expansion modules and the CIPer 50 itself. And then of course you can configure your facets for it. Binary inputs is basically the same. You basically let it know if it's normally open, normally closed. binary output, direct acting or reverse acting, and then the same what position you want it to remain in if your expansion modules basically ever fails. And then universal input can be used for analog input or digital input, binary input. And then here for characteristics, you have 0 to 10, 0 to 20 milliamp. You have 2 to 10, 4 to 20 milliamp, 0 to 10, and 0 to 20 milliamp. So I take back my statement for the 4 to 20. I'm sorry. Yes, the CIPer50 actually can do 4 to 20 milliamp. So you can configure that. I'm sorry. It's the CIPer30s cannot do the 4 to 20 milliamp. And then you also have a block here for putting in your offsets. Binary inputs that actually changes, and then you basically select normally open, normally close. It does do 20K ohm sensors, and it does 10K ohm sensors. The 10K ohm sensors is type 2. There is another module that Guy Zeberg has created that if you need it, we can provide for you. That actually he have already done the conversion for a NTC 10K type 3 sensor. So you can do 20K, 10K type 2, and 10K type 3. So one of the things is also once you bring in all of your parts here, and I just grab all the rest of them. Let's just do this. So once you have all of your data points in, you would actually go to your wire sheet, and here's all your data points, and all of your programming will be done here. One of the things I suggest is basically in the beginning, go ahead and move your blocks to where you can actually see them a lot better instead of having them stacked on each other. So I know some of the questions I have been asked about the inputs and outputs for these controllers, that if you have started writing a program and you need to change the inputs around, is there a way for you to do that? And basically your inputs that you have here is the actual physical inputs that is on the controller, and is basically whatever you go in and name that part right there. So if this is your discharge temp sensor, for analog input 1, if you did discharge air temp sensor and you wrote your program around that, it basically is universal input number 1. So either you have to move that wire on your controller, or you basically would have to go back in and just rename this and then name the correct one, and then relink that link to that part of your program. So like I said, you use kit control for the programming. And is basically Niagara's own palette for doing its programming. So like I said, my if I had my discharge temp and I wanted to make a quick sequence for controlling a chill water valve. So I have my input. I can right click, just say numeric input is my set point. So like I say, it's basically very generic with doing your programming with kit control. There are other tools, like I say, that you have available to you. Now, these tool sets is strictly webs. So it's only for web contractors. And that is the other central line tools here. Um, these tools was basically built around the old Honeywell Care software that you have for air conditioning. There is some for chillers. There's different ones for energy management. There's a general library, heating, even room control. So these are some of the ones here. Any one of these with the CL is basically for that programming. So if I did AC air conditioning, here is some of the tools that I have here. If I wanted to do one for controlling cooling coils, I can take and drop that. And there's different connections that I can do with these programs here. These tools are actually already pre-configured. So you basically would just take your inputs, outputs, and you would actually drop them in there. These actually save time if you have large programs that you need to write for this. So I can actually go to a site and I can show you one of these programs here. Let me go back. So this is a simple program that was written by Guy Zebrick from Honeywell using these tools here. Um, Talking with him, this whole program took him about an hour to write or less um, to get all of this set up. So these are some pretty cool tools. I know they have some that are actually for your PIDs, where they're self-tuning PIDs. So you just have to play around with them. If you are looking at one, and I have this one here, and you need more information on them, you can go to the help and then do guide on target. And then it actually brings up, and then you can start looking at the procedures for that that module there. There is no book that is actually available that actually tells you about every single one of these, other than doing the guide on help for it, guide on target help. The display part of it is we're going to do in a separate training class. It actually is a little bit more intuitive to actually program it. It does show you a display right out of the box, but you cannot access it unless you drop the modules in. And that is going to be Honeywell Eaglehawk HMI. And you would just take this deal here and you would drop it into your services folder. And then in here is where you will start doing some of your configuration there, where you will start doing some of your configuration with how to set this up. So one of the things is when you drop this service in here and you start adding stuff to it, the menus, and you go to push any of the buttons on the front of the controller itself, it's going to ask you for a password. There is no default password for it. The display is protected by password. You have to take and actually put in a password. It uses the same usernames that is on the CIPer50 itself from your licensing server. But it uses these same names that you have under your user services here. So like I said, we're going to have another one that is going to be strictly on setting this up. That's going to be at a different time. This controller, like I said, you can do BACnet, you can do LAN, and you can do Modbus, and you can actually load third-party drivers into it. So Honeywell actually, Tritium has deemed this, instead of being an edge device, they have deemed that the CIPer50 is more of a Jace than an actual edge device. So. All right. So if there's no questions at this time, then we're going to go ahead and end the session. Like I said, if you need any help or anything like that, I'm going to go ahead and put my email address and everything in the chat box. I have the two different email addresses. You can email me at either one. If you need any help, please feel free to reach out. As you heard earlier, we are working on standards that can help get you guys started on some of this stuff. And then and I can keep you updated on any release versions of Niagara that may actually have issues with any of these controllers, and end of life as well. So I want to thank everybody for attending. Like I said, if you have any questions, please reach out. If there is no questions, then feel free to reach out to me. All right, I want to say again, thank everybody for attending. Again, if there's any questions or you guys need any help, feel free to reach out.